Let's dive into a really fascinating idea from psychologist Barry Schwartz. It's one of those ideas that might just flip a switch in your brain, because it challenges something we all kind of take for granted, the belief that more choice is always a good thing. But what if it's not? What if having more options actually, paradoxically, makes our lives worse?
You know, this right here is what Schwartz calls the official dogma of pretty much all Western societies. It's this core belief that to make people better off, you just have to give them more freedom. And how do you do that? By giving them the maximum possible choice. It sounds so logical, so obviously true, that we almost never stop to question it.
But what if that whole line of thinking is just wrong? What if the foundation of that belief is totally flawed? That's the question we're going to dig into. And trust me, the answer has some pretty huge implications for how we live our day-to-day lives.
Okay, to really get why this dogma might be a problem, we first have to appreciate the sheer, overwhelming scale of modern choice. It has completely flooded our world, to the point where we barely even notice it anymore.
I mean, just think about a trip to the grocery store. Schwartz went to his local supermarket and counted the salad dressings. He found 175 different kinds. And that's not even counting all the different oils and vinegars you could use to make your own from scratch. 175 options just for salad dressing.
Or, get this, you want to buy a stereo system. In just one single electronics store, from all the different components they sell, you could put together 6.5 million different stereo systems. How on earth are you supposed to choose the right one from 6.5 million possibilities?
This really sums up the shift perfectly. We went from a world where you got your phone from Ma Bell, there was one kind, it came in one color, it was built like a tank and it never broke. Now, we have a world of endless options, and good luck finding a phone that doesn't do way too much.
And look, this goes so far beyond just shopping. This explosion of choice has moved right into the most important, most profound areas of our lives. In healthcare, you're not a patient anymore. You're a consumer who has to make the final call. Our identities aren't something we inherit. They're something we have to invent for ourselves. Everything about marriage, family, even our careers, it's all up for grabs, and we're the ones who have to decide.
So what's the real consequence of all this choice? Well, the first big problem is a complete paradox. Instead of liberating us, all these options often just paralyze us.
There was this incredible study done with Vanguard's retirement plans that shows this perfectly. So, when a company offered just a handful of mutual funds, let's say 5, participation rates were pretty high. But look at this. When they offered about 50 different funds, the participation rate actually dropped by 10%. In fact, for every 10 additional funds they offered, participation went down by 2%. Think about that for a second. The decision became so complex and overwhelming that people just chose to do nothing. They literally walked away from thousands of dollars in free matching money from their employer, all because the choice was just too difficult. That's paralysis.
Okay, so we know that too much choice can just freeze us in our tracks. But what happens when we actually push through that paralysis and do make a choice? Well, that's when the second big problem kicks in. We end up feeling less satisfied with the choice we made.
And there are basically 3 reasons for this. First, regret. With so many other options out there, it's just so easy to imagine that you could have picked a better one. Second, something called opportunity costs. All the cool features of the options you didn't choose actually subtract from how happy you are with the one you did choose. And third, and this one is a huge one, our expectations go through the roof.
Schwartz tells this perfect story about trying to buy a pair of jeans. He's getting bombarded with questions. Slim fit, relaxed fit, acid wash, stone wash, button fly, zipper fly, and he finally just throws up his hands and says, I want the kind that used to be the only kind.
So here's the punchline. Objectively, he ended up with the best-fitting pair of jeans he had ever owned in his life. All that choice allowed him to get a better result. But subjectively, he felt worse. Why? Because with 100 different types of jeans to choose from, his expectations shifted. He wasn't looking for good enough anymore, he was expecting perfect. And since the jeans were great but not perfect, he walked away feeling disappointed.
And this is what leads to self-blame. See, back when there was only one kind of jeans and they didn't fit great, you'd blame the world. They just don't make good jeans. But when there are hundreds of options and you walk away disappointed, who do you blame? You blame yourself. And Schwartz argues this is a huge contributor to the rise of clinical depression in the modern world.
So if that official dogma of more choice is better is wrong, then what's the alternative? Well, the answer might lie in this really powerful metaphor, the idea of a fishbowl. You can think about it like this. The world we used to live in felt a little more like the 10 Commandments, written in stone.
The rules were clear, there were fewer choices to make. Now, it's more like we get handed a 10 Commandments, do-it-yourself kit every single morning, and it's on us to figure out the rules for ourselves.
A fish in a fishbowl. That might seem limiting, right? But think about it. If you shatter that fishbowl to free the fish, what happens? The fish doesn't gain freedom. It gains paralysis as it flops around on the floor. Those boundaries, the very walls of the fishbowl, are what actually give the fish the freedom to live.
Now let's be really clear. This is not an argument for having no choice. Some choice is definitely better than none. But the crucial point is that there seems to be a sweet spot, a kind of magical amount of choice. And the problem is, we have flown way, way past that point.
And that leaves us with this final, really provocative thought to chew on. The complete absence of a metaphorical fishbowl doesn't lead to freedom, it leads to misery and paralysis. So the real question we should be asking ourselves isn't how to get more choice. It's this: what's your fishbowl? What are the meaningful constraints that will truly set you free?